Okay. Episode 3 of Truth Has No Sides podcast. We've got a few under our belt. It took a while getting things set up, but now that things are set up, Riverside makes it a piece of cake. Today's guest, Adrian. I met him through a friend of a friend of a friend. The guy who started this is the guy who started me down the path. His name is Dick Birch. He's the guy in the first chapter of the book called Spiritual Dick, the 95-year-old man that I've actually been trying to get him on the podcast, but we cannot get that we can't figure that out because of his technology issues, but we'll figure it out. His nephew-in-law, I crossed paths with his nephew-in-law about some meditation questions he had, and then he connected me with Adrian, and here we are. And Adrian and I have been just crossing each other's path for the last couple of months, having some great discussions about meditation, and I've kind of been just listening to his unfolding because he's got a very interesting story being here in Utah. I was born and raised in Utah as well, and we will talk all about that over the next little bit in the podcast. Adrian, will you let people know who you are, where you're from, and all that
Yeah,
good stuff?
sure. My name's Adrian Dayton, born in Los Angeles, but raised mostly here in Salt Lake, and went through school here. I was raised in the Mormon church, served a mission to Antofagasta, Chile for 2 years, and did some translating work after that. And so I've stayed fluent in the Spanish, which has been cool. And yeah, been in the Mormon church my whole life. You know, I have 4 brothers. We all served missions. We were all Eagle Scouts. And, now I'm still in the church. I've served in multiple callings. I've been in bishoprics. I'm currently in the High Council on the Cottonwood Stake. And a couple of my brothers aren't in the faith, and a couple of them still are. So, that's kind of my, I guess, a little bit of my story.
And we got a lot to discuss there because I was born and raised in Utah as well. I never attended a day of church in my life. That never meant we were atheists. Never meant we were Catholic. I didn't understand. I never even heard the phrase Buddhism or Hinduism. But being raised in Utah, we had a lot of incredible people. But we also had some people around us that their kids couldn't play with us because we weren't Mormon.
That's so weird. Never heard of it.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? But I guess that's a great first question to go to. You bringing up that half the brothers are in and half the brothers are out, right? You seem to be kind of the bridge there, where you're still in the church, but you are going down a path of a more spiritual path, meditation, things that are wouldn't be consistent with a lot of Mormons, maybe I would say. But
I would say it's not traditionally part of the Mormon kind of journey, but I'm really at peace with kind of the combination of spirituality and religion in this case. One thing is the way I see God and feel God. I feel like this is like one of my spiritual gifts. I've always known God. I've just always felt God's presence, and I felt that God was there for me and I could speak to him. And as I've continued on this path of spirituality, I feel like it's just made me more connected to God. And I feel like my growing up in the religion helped prepare me, I don't know, to kind of see God and all these other things that are really beautiful.
Perfect. And would you consider yourself spiritual then?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Kind of like our first take on this without the Wi-Fi cutting out. Everyone always says I'm not religious, I'm spiritual.
Right. Right.
You've got both.
Yeah, and I would say that I believe that all of us are spiritual beings, and living in a physical experience. I think we all have that kind of seed of divinity inside of us. And and through this journey, that's just been confirmed for me more than ever.
That's interesting about all this. The guy I was interviewing a couple days ago, he is really big. He was a Catholic. He had some issues with the Catholic Church, but he was really big. His podcast and most of his time was spent talking about the Course in Miracles. Right?
Yeah.
That teaching from the psychologist who had Jesus channel through them the Course in Miracles, right? And it's just interesting to hear everyone's different perspective. How did you get going down the path of where you are today with
Yeah, great
meditation,
question.
with I think you've done some psychedelics, and so tell us about that.
So my journey really started with just a relationship. I'm part of a business accelerator to help companies grow, and it's part of the entrepreneur organization. And so, as part of this accelerator that I was running, once a quarter we have this speaker come in, and his name is Ryan Shorthill, and he would spend a full day working with these companies that I was coaching, and at the end of the day, he'd say, if you need anything, here's my phone number, here's my cell, call me, text me anytime. And he does these trainings all over the country. And I just remember the first time he said it, I was like, he can't actually want people to call him. Like, that would be overwhelming. And then he came the next quarter, and like tons of people in the room had called him, like at night when they had crises in their business. And he was just like, such a like loving, giving person. And there was just like, I just felt something around him, like he was just, obviously you've heard this term, like vibrating on a different frequency. There's just like something about him. And so I finally, the third time he came to train, I said, okay, Ryan, I said this in front of everyone, like, what's your reading list? What books do I need to read to understand you? Like why you're wired the way you are. And he recommended the book, The Surrender Experiment. And he recommended the book, The Autobiography of a Yogi. And I read the Autobiography of a Yogi first, which is just beautiful, beautiful, true story of this amazing, amazing, religious leader from India who just was connected to God at a very young age and saw miracles, performed miracles. And as I read it, there was just like so much truth in it. And I just, and it was interesting. I didn't think like, it didn't make me think that my beliefs were wrong. What it made me realize is like, oh, wow, like there's even more truth out there than I knew about. And it's so beautiful. And so, so once I finished reading that book, obviously like my thinking had kind of expanded. And, and then at the same time, I came into a crisis in my life, which is, my oldest son who you've met. He was hospitalized for depression for the first time. And he'd been on the spectrum, but he'd never had any major mental health issues. But it's like when he hit high school and all the hormones of teenagerness hit, it's like he couldn't cope with life anymore. He had this just severe social anxiety. And so, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, okay, here's a problem. Let's solve this. I brought in the best experts. I got him to the best clinic. I got, whatever the medications we need, like let's get the best psychiatrist. And no matter what I did, nothing helped. If anything, it seemed like anything I tried just hurt, just made things worse. And it was the first time in my life when I've been faced with a problem that's just bigger than me. And that's what led me first to start meditating. And I hired a coach, and I was terrible at it at first. And I think my goal at first was to meditate for 8 minutes. And I think the first 2 times I tried, I fell asleep. And but I kept working with it. It was funny because I remember reading your book, like you had some similar experiences your first couple of times, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then one time, probably 2-3 weeks into trying to meditate, and I wasn't even trying every day. I wasn't very consistent at first, but I was sitting down with my eyes closed, and I was trying to go through the routine that my meditation coach had given me. And for a moment, it was like the clouds cleared, and I had this feeling of just like peace and joy. And then it was gone. And I was like, oh, what was that? Like, what was that? And so it's just like a little like inkling of like the peace I could feel meditating. And that obviously like gave me some motivation, like, okay, I got to stick with this. But then over that same time period, I had been studying plant-based medicine. I read the book, it's the pop culture book on how to change your mind. right? So I read the book, How to Change Your Mind. I'd listened to some podcasts. I've watched some Netflix series. And I was really interested in what I might learn by doing a medicine journey. So, I assume the listeners should know what I'm talking about with the medicine journey, but I mean, plant-based medicine, there's lots of types. Ayahuasca in South America, there's, psilocybin, which is more commonly known as mushrooms. Anyway, but, to have a medicine journey was kind of crossing, it's definitely a gray area in the Mormon church. Most people have never
That's
been
a
on a medicine.
polite way of saying it.
They wouldn't consider going on a medicine journey because, strictly speaking, in most of the United States, it is still illegal to use these plants. Although Utah has passed a law that under the direction of a doctor, you are allowed to use psilocybin now, but no clinics are yet offering that service here. But anyway, so, but I was just called to this, I was called to this. And so I started interviewing actually members of my faith that had had medicine journeys and, just kind of reaching out. So I probably interviewed 3 or 4 different members of my faith. And, my wife's biggest concerns was, number one, if I did a medicine journey, would it change how I felt about her? Right. Which that's a good fear. Right. Like, and her second fear was that it might change how I feel about God and about my faith, and, but anyway, after interviewing all these people, I mean, universally, everyone I spoke to had a very positive experience that helped them in their life. One person had an experience that was just neither positive or negative. I think they had severe anxiety, and so it triggered some anxiety. But anyway, everyone else had very positive experiences. And anyway, it just seemed like I don't know, it seemed like the right thing to do. And so I found a couple who's also of the Mormon faith, and they're trained in taking people on medicine journeys. And it's funny because I talked to a couple other people about potentially taking me on journeys that didn't believe what I believed. And I worried that they were trying to, I don't know, that there might be this idea in my head that they were trying to change my religion or change my beliefs,
Yeah, they're trying to get you away from Mormonism in a
Yeah,
sense.
but so to find this couple that was like, they're also in the faith, they, it made me feel very safe. And it's just, it's this couple that lives, in one of the suburbs of Salt Lake. And once their kids go to school, they have a special room. It's like their mushroom room. And they have guide people on journeys there. And they just feel called to this work,
Yeah.
And not very expensive. But anyway, so I remember pulling up in my car to their house. And it's kind of this moment of like, I'm sitting in my car and I know that if I get out of the car and walk in the door, that like my life is going to be changed, kind of this like crossing the Rubicon moment,
Mm-hmm.
And, what I had been very thoughtful about this, I'd been prayerful, like I felt good about it. So I got up, went inside, and, I don't want to go into too much detail on the medicine journey, except to say that, my mom passed away 12 years ago. And during my medicine journey, like I had a vision where I was with my mom, and it was just beautiful. And it was just this connection to this place and this feeling of pure love. And, and it was just, some people have, dark stuff that comes out in medicine journey, or there's negative and positive. But for me, it was just like tapping in directly to like God's love. And, it was very, very special. And okay, so I finished my medicine journey, and then I go out, and the next day I sit down to do my meditation, and it's just like the door's now just opening again for me, right? Where I just got a glimpse that one time. It's like, now that I had the medicine journey, it was like, I knew what I was looking for, and I could meditate and get to that place of love and calm and beauty. And I've meditated in some fashion every single day since then. So it's been almost 280 days. And, but what's really wild is after I'd done my medicine journey, they call this like the synchronicity, like other things started happening to me, like amazing things. And so like a week after my medicine journey, I think I shared this with you, but I woke up one morning and my whole body just ached. And so I went to get a massage at the place I normally go, but the person who I normally use wasn't there. So I got some random luck of the draw person. And she comes in and puts her hands on my back and she says to me, "You have a lot going on with you right now." I mean, I've had dozens of massages, maybe I've had 100 massages, and no one's ever talked to me like that in a massage, right? Anyway, this woman is like an empath that turns out she's studied plant-based medicine for like a decade. And she ends up just like talking me through the trauma of my life while I'm just bawling, just sobbing on the massage table. Strangest massage I've ever had, but like, it was just beautiful. And it was just like, after I'd had this medicine journey, it was like, I was drawn to this person that could like help me and like give me this gift of just like this beautiful experience. And so my heart is just like open and I'm just so emotional. And that night, I flew to Texas. I'd already planned in advance to go to the Tony Robbins 4-day Unleash the Power Within event. And, I've not been like a Tony Robbins fanboy. Like I've always had respect for him because he's kind of like the best at what he does, or he sure seems to be the most, popular. But I felt kind of called to go do this. I mean, I sold my company a couple of years ago. I was in this place of transition of like, what do I do with my life? What do I do with my son? And so during the 4-day Tony Robbins event, he takes you through this meditation called priming meditation. And, I don't want to get into all the details except to say like during that meditation, I had another like out of body experience. I wasn't on medicine. I was just meditating. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. And, like I literally like was connected to God and it was beautiful. And, yeah. And so, but there was just this energy of that time period. Like after my medicine journey, every meditation was so powerful and everything I did, it seemed like, was just leading me to these people that helped me have beautiful experiences. And so that my meditation coach, she called that like kind of that month, she called it like my rising and passing, which in some forms of meditation is kind of just like one of the stages of meditation as you move towards, awakening or stream entry or whatever you want to call it. And I had kind of 4 amazing experiences. And then like those experiences kind of ended. So I kept meditating, and there was ups and downs and life is just like life. But I think that kind of month of rising and passing, it's like changed me forever.
And that was in a sense, the catalyst that created your ability to stay consistent.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's like,
would you
before the
consider,
medicine, I just couldn't, it was very hard for me to meditate before the journey. And then after it was just much, much easier. And I don't know if that's, you've heard of this before from other people, but it certainly helped unlock some things for me.
yeah, I've very rarely, 95% of people I speak with have struggles with meditation at the beginning because it just goes against everything that we've ever been built, conditioned, been a part
Yeah.
of, listened to. It just, the society we've built the last 150 years, it just doesn't jive with that. So one of the things that happens when people have great experiences at the beginning or have a great experience with psychedelics or the meditations is they they chase that feeling. So
Mm-hmm.
they're thinking that every meditation is going to give them that feeling. And from what I'm hearing, that's not the case, correct? Have you had an issue with chasing, always wanting to feel that peace and bliss with meditations? Because a lot of
Yeah.
people, if they don't feel it in the future, they stop meditating. They think it's over.
Yeah. So it's interesting because for that first month, it was just like I was so charged, like spiritually charged that just like everything I did connected me to that love and that feeling. And after that subsided, I had kind of like I don't know, I guess you'd call like a dark night phase where it was just a lot harder for me to find that. But it was good. I had a good coach, right? Like she just talked me through it. Like, look, you had this rising and passing and it was beautiful. And like, there's going to be cycles. And now you're in a cycle where you're having to deal with, some of the other things and it'll come back. And it has been like that for me. Like I've had waves of, I've had some other really great meditations in the last 6 months, even if I'm not on kind of a continuous high, like I was for that month.
Yes. And if I'm correct, you're consistent with meditation, and mushroom psilocybin was your only experience with plant-based medicine, right? I know you and I
Yeah.
talked about ayahuasca, but it's only been that one session.
Yeah. It's only been, it's only been psilocybin. And before that, I mean, a lot of, Mormons have some rebellious period in their youth where they smoke pot or they drink and then they come back to the faith or they leave the
Hmm.
faith. Right. But
Hmm.
like, I've never had that. I mean, I've never smoked a joint. I've never been drunk. Right. Like I've never had, like really had alcohol, besides like when they accidentally served me pina colada at like the Mexican resort, you know what I mean? Um, uh, but, so yeah, so for me, it's like, even though, like psilocybin's kind of like maybe a gray area in my Mormon faith, I felt like the intentions I went to it with were very pure. I wasn't looking to party. I wasn't looking to go like escape life, I was looking to like, go deeper. And so one thing that really was kind of surprising to me is, one thing that Mormonism really teaches is guilt. And I don't know if it's like that Mormonism, but like religion often teaches guilt, right? And so, one of my brothers, I shared with all my brothers like this journey I'd had, right? And my brother said to me, "Oh, you really should talk to your bishop about this," and I think he probably meant it like you should go and like like repent for this to him,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I just thought like, look, like I love the gospel, and I have a ton of respect for my like so in Mormons we call like your priesthood authority, like my bishop, like him and I have a relationship. Like I feel like he is a spiritual guide that can help me, and so I want to speak to him not to repent, but I want to speak to him to get his guidance, like let him know my experience. And he was absolutely awesome. I shared the experience with him, and he said, "Yeah, it is kind of a gray area." He didn't criticize me. He didn't say never do it again. You know, he just like he was very loving and understanding, and because it led to so much good and so much love and just such a connection for me to God. I think it would have been hard for him to say like that doesn't sound like a positive thing, because it just
Yeah.
was, it was such a positive thing.
Yeah.
And and then it took me another like 3 months, 4 months before I had the courage to tell my father. My father's still in the faith. He's serving a mission in New Zealand right now, and I didn't know how he would. I didn't know how he would take it. You know, and my dad is just like, he's just like one of the most loving people you'll ever meet, and that's exactly how he received this when I shared it with him. Was so thankful that I was open and shared it with him. Was so open. Was just so glad that I had a positive experience. He did kind of say, "How did you even find out about this?" Right? Because it's so far outside of the norm,
Hmm.
for most Mormons. And you know, both I spoke to both my bishop and stake president. Neither of them had anybody talk to them about medicine journeys. And so I think, I mean, look, this is just my prediction. 5 years from now, medicine will be more popular than Prozac. Like medicine journeys will be, whether it's, psilocybin or whether it's something else. It's just, there's just so much benefit to it, and I mean, a lot of the people I interviewed, they had dealt with childhood trauma. And so the medicine helped them deal with that trauma. Um, I think what made me unique is like, I wasn't dealing with childhood trauma. I was dealing with like current trauma with my son, you know, and, and just helping me to understand like what, like what my role was, in helping my son.
I need to take notes more because there's so
Yeah.
many questions. Well, I'm just saying there's so many questions. We could go off with Taylor. We could go off with your dad, your brothers. What's interesting to me is one of the questions you and I were going to discuss is have you lost friends and family to this, right? And you've kind of
Oh, I love this question.
so
Yeah.
so let's go there because it's you've preluded to some people were okay with it, some people were not okay with it. You didn't really have any. Maybe you did that you didn't tell me. Maybe there was some very visceral reactions of like, "Holy shit, you're going to hell! Don't ever talk to me again." Um, but I don't want to lose. I got so many questions for this because there's so many people
Yeah.
that will really relate to this here in Utah and across your faith. So let's go there. Let's go with your family and friends. The reactions seem to be decent and pretty good? Were there
Yeah.
any bad ones, etc.?
So, I would say that my favorite reaction, which a lot of people gave me, was just one of curiosity. Like, wow, what was that like? Why did you decide to do that? How has that affected you? Right? Like those are my favorite responses
Hmm.
because I think it is so unusual. Like most Mormons have never met a Mormon that's done a medicine journey, in this way. And so I loved that. There were a few people, and really, I mean, this is not a story I've shared with many people. I mean, and I think probably more people will hear the story through your podcast than I've told by far because I've kept it to a pretty small group. But I think the story is worth sharing beyond that group because um, I had a few people that just said to me, "Oh, be careful." But we grew up in the don't do drugs era, where it's like if you smoke pot once, like you're going to be addicted to crack next week,
Like heroin with an identity.
Right, right, right. And so that's like been ingrained in our minds. And then also being Mormon, it's kind of like we never kind of got over that. Um, but I mean, I'd done all the research and it's like, and I think you may even talk about this in your book, right? The lab rats, when you give them cocaine, they'll eat cocaine till they die. You give them psilocybin, they'll have it once and never have it again because it's not a completely pleasant experience, you know?
Hmm.
And it's like it's not an addictive, this is not an addictive substance. Um, so, but I think there's just a lot of fear of anything that we don't know. So no, like I haven't lost any friends from it. I think there's some people that maybe, don't respect the choice I've made. But even those people, I think they still love me. I think that,
Hmm.
even the concern they showed for me came from a place of love, you
Yes.
know? Um, but on the other extreme though, going on this journey, Charlie, it's made me so many new friends that are on the same spiritual journey. And I mean, and you see this, like I'd never seen this before because it's only been like 10 months for me, but it just seems like every plane I fly on or I sit next to someone, it's like I'm just attracted to these people that are seeking, that are just seeking, right? That are seeking truth and they're seeking, this connection, um, this spiritual connection. And so, it's been, I mean, I remember the first time you and I talked, I was like in tears within 5 minutes. And, I don't know what it was, but, there's like a connection with, I love the term fellow travelers, right? Like once we know we're on this journey, it's been beautiful. All the friends I've made, um, that are also seeking.
Well, I think one of the most interesting things is they talk about synchronicities. I don't think it's, and I completely agree with that. I don't think it's so much about synchronicities. I think there's so many more people that have had experiences that are terrified to share them. So once there is someone sitting next to them who is confident enough to bring that up, Like, there's so many people that for some reason, one of the first questions out of my mouth many years ago was, do you meditate? And it just caught them off guard, right? So they understood, the walls came down. So I've had so many people that we've had certain discussions, and I'll ask an off the wall question, like as simple as, do you meditate? And the next thing you know, they're telling me about the voices they hear. One guy was hunting, and a voice, he didn't know if it was God, or a voice said, don't go hunting today. And he's had this voice in his head for the last 2 decades that has guided him out of incredible amounts of pain and suffering. He hasn't even told his wife about it. There are dozens of those that I've crossed paths with, that 85-90% of those people were so relieved to finally tell someone that. They see beings, they see angels, they see entities, they saw something as a kid. Dick, the spiritual Dick, he used to see little elves running in and out of his room, right? And he was in the Mormon faith as well, being in Utah. He didn't tell anybody that. I don't think he told anybody that until 40, 50 years down the road. I know so many people. 9 times out of 10, the people that cross my path are the people I know have a story of a voice. They saw something, they experienced something, and most of them don't want to share it. They're nervous for their community, nervous for their family, nervous for their faith, their religion, nervous that people will think they're crazy. But that is more common than not. It's very rare that if you get around anybody who is somewhat comfortable with you, that they don't have a story like this, whether they did a psychedelic journey and they don't want to tell anybody about it, whether they have a voice in their head, whether they see something magical, they did an Akashic record reading, they did an energy healing, they did a massage, one random day that someone felt energy on them and said, you're this open to this, this, and this. I think everyone has had something like that, and I think more and more people are feeling more comfortable sharing it.
Well, and
That's kind of why I appreciate with you is
yeah, I
sharing
mean,
this story.
and I think the way my beliefs have evolved, is, and I think this is one thing that's maybe unique about me is, I've met a lot of people, that are spiritual, even like my brother Brandon. He's left the faith and he's really into meditation and he's found a ton of peace there, but he's rejected the religion that he grew up in. Whereas like I'm still 100% in on the Mormon faith. Like I love my faith, and my understanding of God has expanded. I was raised with this idea of like, God has created this path in Mormonism for us that will help us return to him. And I still believe that that's a true path. But I also now see that like we have this infinite, all powerful God, and he's going to find every way possible to bring his children to him, whether it's through meditation or whether it's through medicine, whether it's through, other practices. Like I just feel like I kind of grew up looking at God through like a keyhole, like this is God. And now it's like the door's open. It's like, oh, there's so much more to God than I saw before. And that's been really beautiful.
Yeah, that was one of the great things. One of my favorite teachers, Adi Shanti, always talked about. We don't have the capacity to know what God is.
Hmm.
So even when those doors open, there's going to be another door and another door and another door. It's a
So
very finite perspective with the mind trying to understand the all-knowing, and we just can't do that. But we do a hell of a job trying to figure it out.
yes, I want to share with you a story about someone I met just 2 weeks ago in Africa that totally blew my mind. So this woman, her name's Phyllis, and had a normal life until about 7-8 years ago. I think she's probably in her early mid 40s, and she got some bone arthritis issue, and so she couldn't walk. So she goes to the hospital, and this is in Eldoret, Kenya, kind of out of the way hospital, and they give her the wrong medication, and it sucks all of kind of like the marrow out of her bones, so her bones are extremely brittle. And by the time they realize it's done permanent damage. So, like a kid sat on her foot and it broke. And anyway, so I got a chance to talk to Phyllis, and she's laying in a bed. She has a barrier up so the kids that are coming and going don't like sit on her because they'll break her bones. She can't be in a wheelchair. She sits in this, kind of 8 by 10 room all day. And she has the biggest smile you've ever seen. And she's just like, and I said to our interviewer, I said, Phyllis, how can you stay so happy? And she's like, it's because I have God. And she's like, and God sends his angels to me. Like, if I need anything, I just ask, and he sends his angels. And, my father-in-law is on a mission there and brings her groceries once a week. We got to her house with some groceries. This is our last day in Kenya. And, they had one tomato. That's all they had for food, for her son who's 18, who looks like he's about 14. But so I interview her and I finish this conversation with her, and I get up to walk out, and it was like I had gotten hit with a wall of cold water of like awareness of like Phyllis, she gets it. Like she gets it. She's way further down this path than any of us are. Like, because it's like she has everything she needs right there. And it was just such a beautiful experience to meet her.
Well, knowing you the last few months I'm amazed it took 35 minutes to get tears out of you. I thought you'd hit tears. I mean, I got a little tear in my eye too. I thought we'd hit tears a lot earlier in this call. Amazing. I mean, you think about those stories and you think about the stuff we worry about. I've always wondered. I don't know if I could handle that. I have a very hard time with the shift on the planet happening now, where it's kind of opened up a lot of people. It's opened up myself even more of feeling the pain of the planet. I have a hard time with homeless people. I have a hard time with hurt animals. I have a hard time with stories like Phyllis. And listening to enough of Ram Dass, of opening his heart and having his teachings talk about just being in the moment with that pain. That's a very, very difficult thing for me. With as much as I know and what I've experienced, I would have been a disaster around Phyllis. I mean, I'm a disaster driving in my car, seeing a homeless person with a dog on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And that's still a part of my process, is opening my heart and being okay with that pain.
Yeah.
Because there's so much pain, and being that collective consciousness. And I know we individualize and we identify with our own thoughts and our own pains and sufferings, but it's that collective is suffering right now, and that's tough. But you got people like Phyllis who are smiling, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
Just
well,
amazing.
And I'm sure you read the book The Power of Now, where it talks about how, people that go through struggles, they're just ahead. They're just ahead because they're figuring it out. And it's kind of like this. They did this study of paraplegics and lottery winners. Okay. 6 months after winning the lottery. Have you heard this? 6 months after winning the lottery winners, they say they were happier the day before they won the lottery than 6 months after they won it. Quadriplegics, 6 months later, are happier than the day before they were injured. And like what's the difference, right? It's just like one group had everything taken away from them and realized they have everything they need, and the other group was given something they didn't earn, and and is self-destructing, right?
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast. That is a whole nother, because that's an interesting, just a sidebar here, because people will hear those stories, and I completely agree with them. That money doesn't buy happiness, or that why can't we be as happy as Phyllis or a quadriplegic? We all have different journeys. Our souls have signed up for different things, and money brings happiness to a considerable amount of people.
Yeah.
And I just was listening to I saw a podcast with Tom Shadyac on it, the guy from Ace Ventura. He wrote the Happiness video or movie. He's
Yeah.
the guy that had everything, all those movies, success, and he backed out, and now he's kind of helping people with happiness. And the podcast was entitled "What Truly Brings You Happiness?" in parentheses. It's not money. I understand. I understand that. But there are a considerable amount of people on this planet that that's exactly what they signed up for. There are a considerable amount of people on this planet that they signed up for wanting a relationship, a great family, a relation. So when these people talk about these ultimatums of money won't bring happiness, or that wife won't bring you happiness, or that materialistic thing won't bring happiness, some people signed up for that. Maybe that's exactly what's going to fill that hole. And that is part of this podcast. Is I love these stories. I love these different takes, these different views, these different understandings, these different perspectives. But I also want people to understand that if whatever they think is going to bring them happiness, that's what they should pursue.
Yeah.
Because because I don't. It's very interesting. It's very interesting to walk down this path and to see how many times we are always thinking heads or tails, this or that, right or wrong. Why can't you be as happy as Phyllis? Why can't, lottery winners? I'm sure there's a considerable amount of lottery winners who are incredibly happy 6 months
Sure.
after they won that
Yeah.
money,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, what's been like telling for me in this journey is, now it's been, I don't know, like it's been almost 2 years since my son started having mental health issues. And now he's in, he dropped out of school again. He's in another residential treatment program right now. And, it's like, people love to hear stories with happy endings, and
Mm-hmm.
people, oh, how's your son now? And it's like, it's still really hard. And, um, it's like dealing with him, working to help him, working to understand him, working to be there for him. It's been a catalyst that's forced me to change. And like, I'm not done yet. Like, I have a lot of work to do.
Mm.
And, I go to these, we have family therapy with him. And I think my attitude towards the family therapy was like, oh yeah, I'll keep going. Maybe something will help him. And I just kind of had this realization a couple weeks ago that like, no, the family therapy is to heal me. Like I need to be healed.
Mm-hmm.
And, like that perspective. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing with my journey is just the change in perspective.
Yes.
Everything I see, right? Like I'm looking out the same windows of my eyes, but the world looks different. And, I see beauty in a different way. And, it's like everything is high definition, both the sadness and the happiness.
Yeah. That's that shift in perspective is very powerful to see that. I'm kind of the same as you, always trying to help people. And then I realized that I was the one being helped.
Mm.
I was trying to heal or help or guide someone, and there's been people in my life that I really couldn't help, but they were such clear channels for my path and my healing, and showing me horrific truths about myself.
Mm.
There have been some people who have just had such anger towards certain things I've done, or how I am, or who I've been, or what potential I'm leaving inside me because of fears. And there's been discussions, or they've been upset with me and said just some things that would make me crumble. That's been the best thing. Those have been the best teachings. Those have been the things that I've had to become okay with, understanding that what they're telling me has nothing to do with their anger towards me. It was truly, they almost got out of the way and they were channeling a message from the universe. And that's another thing. People see signs, they see synchronicities, they ask their angels, they ask God, they ask for spirit guides, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes those most of those messages come through physical form, through a relationship, like Taylor did for you.
Yeah.
The love of my life came from me. There's been times where she has said some things to me that were just like, drop me to my knees, painful for me to admit. And as soon as I let the defensiveness go, the anger go, the resentment of thinking it was an attack on me, when it was actually weeks prior, I was in my bed in tears asking for answers, and I just got that answer, but it wasn't the answer I wanted to hear. Once you realize that, everything shifts. Everything shifts. And that's a big thing, I think, people listening is the guy I interviewed before you. He was talking about ask and you shall receive, right? He's big on the Course in Miracles. So he's very direct in Jesus and Course in Miracles. And he said, ask and you shall receive. And as I like to do on this podcast, I pushed back and said, what about the people who have asked and they haven't received? And he kind of paused for a minute and he kind of said, well, just keep asking. Keep your antennas up, as he said. And he gave some decent answers back to that, and of what he was conditioned to understand and what he believes and what has worked for him. But those answers come in a lot of ways that we're not prepared to. And a lot of times those answers come in a very direct, what we would consider hurtful way. And we just need to be open and listening to those messages in a very neutral way, saying that you're asking, you're obviously in pain and suffering. You caused this. It's not going to be rainbows and unicorns to get out of it. And this message coming from this person that you think is attacking you is, here's your message. Do you want to get mad at that person for just being the messenger, or do you want to hear it? So yeah. It's been interesting to learn that, and it's been interesting to get to know Taylor a little bit more. And that is one thing you and I discussed after we first met Taylor. Listening to everything I've listened to, the books I've read, being able to kind of piece things together is Taylor is an incredibly evolved human being who doesn't understand it. He is an incredibly open, sensitive, very intelligent being that came to this planet to be a catalyst for you and anyone he crosses paths with. And those are usually the most powerful people. When they walk into that smoothie place we went to and his consciousness is impacting the 50 people in there, but yet he's still got anxiety because he's meeting someone new and he's not even thinking about that. Those are the people who create incredible amounts of change. And this society that you and I have become somewhat accustomed to, like most people, he wasn't built for it. And there's a lot of people like him. There's more people like him than not. There's a lot of people fighting it, and they've tried to figure out how to adapt to it. But it reminds me, let me pull this up real quick. He reminds me of what Krishnamurti said many years ago. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Mm. And I would assume that most of us agree that the earth is struggling, humanity's struggling, we're very divided. Taylor and many others like him incarnated on this planet to help us move forward. And there's a considerable amount of people who believe they're helping through certain modalities and that, but the ones who are really doing the heavy lifting don't even know they're doing the heavy lifting, and they're really struggling with it. And for you to have that realization that it was more about you than him is a very powerful thing.
There's still a lot of work to do, but I feel like I have some better tools now than I did before. And,
I bet.
And a different perspective,
I bet, man. Yeah, and I hope to talk to him soon. I hope we can get on some Zoom calls with him, because I loved our conversation we had.
Yeah. I'll be honest. Like, when you met him and the two of you were talking, like, I couldn't even follow some of the conversation, because it seems like you were able to connect with him on a wavelength because of just your way of being, and it was pretty beautiful. Like, it was kind of like emotional to me just to see him be able to like connect with you. So when he asked for if he could contact you, I was pretty stoked. So I'm excited for you guys to get a chance. So
yeah, I love that. I hope they can figure that out. That'd be cool just to talk. And he talked about wanting to meditate, so we'll get him meditating as well. So that'd be great.
I think it'd be so helpful for him.
Yeah. And I want to see a sensitive soul like him and how open he is, what meditation will do for him. I bet it's going to be great.
Dude, Charley, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, this is incredible. Do you have more time, or do we need to wrap it up?
Yeah, I probably need to wrap it up in just the next few minutes here. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let me think. We've talked about modalities. We talked about the biggest misconception, friends and family, the faith. Well, if we need to wrap it up, let's do the last question that I always ask.
Yeah,
What is truth to you?
yeah. So, before I started this journey, I think I thought of truth as pretty uh, like that it wasn't subjective, right? That truth was one way and that it was the same for everybody, you know. And I think the way my like my beliefs and my thinking has shifted um, is I think my truth is very individual. You know, like I know God, and I have this connection to God, and that is truth to me, and and it's sacred to me, and it's very valuable to me. Um, but I think I used to have this sense that like that this truth was portable, like and I was like, can share with people the light and the beauty I see in the world, and the beauty I see in God. Um, but but everyone else has to find their own truth, you know. And I think I'm much more supportive of that looking like maybe different than I did before.
Yeah. Okay. Great answer. Great answer. Well, we've been on for 51 minutes. That's a good time to end. Adrian, I appreciate you being so open with your journey,
Of
with your
course.
family, your son, your faith. I know a lot of people are going to love to listen to this one because being in Utah, there's going to be a lot of people that can relate. Hopefully, it'll open up more people. A lot of people maybe it'll shift things in their mind. But I love I love the story of how this has not pulled you away from what you believed before the spiritual path, because that's usually what it does. It usually takes someone from heads to the tails of the coin, and they don't realize it's about the same. So I love the combination of what you've figured out. So
Oh, thank you,
keep doing
Charlie.
what
Well,
keep doing what you're doing, man. I really appreciate it.
well, love you, man. I just you've got a light about you that's you're blessing a lot of people. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Well, thank you, Adrian. Love you too, and we'll talk to you shortly, bud.
Sounds good.
See you, man. Bye.
Bye.